Hello, my name is Adrian Stevens. In this video I'm going to show you how to record for a dramatic reading. In a later video I give an example of the complete life cycle of a dramatic reading, so we're just going to focus on techniques in this video. The first question is finding your part, and I've got another video on the Librivox forum, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. There is a magic window in the thread, and we're going to look at the part of Mr. James Ryder that I previously recorded. He's in Story 7, The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle. So the first question is how you, let me make this a bit bigger, how you find your materials. Well, there is always a link to the source text. So I right click on this, open in new tab, and we've got to find the Blue Carbuncle. Okay, there we are. Now with dramatic readings, there is a link to a script that's been marked up. So if I right click this, whereas the original shows the quote marks and sometimes the quotes are identified, the book coordinator has gone through this and has actually split it out. So there's Mr. James Ryder has got an orange background. So I flick through this and look at the text to find the first line, which is here. Now, what we're doing initially is trying to find the voice. And so we were looking for description about the part we're playing. Turning round, we saw a little rat-faced fellow. Well, that sums me up perfectly. And then whined the little man, so we've got to put that into our voice. He asked in a quavering voice, so when you perform this line, you've got to bring that into it. And then it looks like he's got quite a lot of lines later on, where he's mainly the speaking person. Okay, so we've reviewed the part. We need to find a suitable voice. I recorded this with a North London accent, a kind of common person from London accent. And I think what we'll do is we'll actually listen to the recording I made earlier rather than me doing it on camera. To read the part, we've identified the lines, we've thought a little bit about the character, and then you need to read each line. So you start off by reading the Mr. James Ryder read by, and then you need to read each line and leave plenty of space between it. So even when there's not much gap between this line, "Oh, sir, you are the very man whom I long to meet. I can hardly explain to you how interested I am in this matter." Well, something like that. You need to leave a big gap between these lines so the person who's assembling the completed section or chapter can identify the start and end of each line clearly. And as you read it through, this is a performance, so, read the lines around you and understand how you're reacting to the people around you. A flush sprang to the white cheeks of the stranger. I'm not quite sure how you vocally act a flush, but it shows there's some kind of emotion going on here. Anyway, let's go to the actual recording I made. I download this. I'll put it on my desktop. And I'll bring up Audacity and drag that MP3 file into Audacity. There's Audacity. There's the file we just downloaded. And I'll do some commentary on this part as we listen to parts of it. James Ryder, read by Adrian Stevens. Okay, so that's the mandatory introduction. Let's skip on.
For God's sake, have mercy! Think of me father, of me mother. It would break their hearts. I never went wrong before.
So notice the big change here in volume between the previous line.
It was Catherine Cusack who told me of it.
So he's kind of admitting something and stumbling over it. Let's bring up the text again. Okay, so we're here. He said in a crackling voice, so let's listen to that again.
It was Catherine Cusack who told me of it.
Well, it's the best I could manage with a crackling voice. And then Ryder threw himself down suddenly, and then he shrieked. So that is the explanation for the sudden change in volume.
For God's sake, have mercy! Think of me father, of me mother. It would break their hearts. I never went wrong before. I never will again. I swear it. I swear on a Bible. Oh, don't bring it into court. For Christ's sake, don't!
Let's skip on somewhere else randomly.
When Orna had been arrested, it seemed to me that it would be best for me to get away with the stone at once, for I did not know at what moment the police might not take it into their heads to search me in me room.
So that's part of the longer line, so it's on a more even keel.
Without ever having touched the wealth for which I sold my character. God help me. God help me.
That is me acting out. He burst into convulsive sobbing with his face buried in his hands. And actually, when you're recording it, if you can do the action, it makes the sound more believable. And it's also great fun acting that kind of piece, because you can let yourself be slightly more emotional than normal. So there's a couple of technical things we need to talk about. You need to apply replay gain to the entire recording in order that the person reassembling the part has got parts of roughly the same volume. And I've got another video on the replay gain plugin, effect replay gain. The other is remembering your voice. If you get proof listen notes on the performance, then you may need to make changes to it. So, for example, we'll pick out a part in the middle.
There was a little shed in the yard, and behind this I drove one of the birds, a big fine one. Why?
I switched to waveform dB mode because that shows up the whole word, if you like.
With a barred tail.
You've got to get into character if you're going to repeat a part. So let's say we're going
There was a little shed in the yard, and behind this I drove one of the birds, a big fine one, white.
So say we have to redo this. We need to find the line.
There was a little shed in...
Oh, it's a little shed. No matter, I'm not finding it. Little shed. Okay, so if we're going to redo this part, then I would read this. Now, this is not a video about editing, so I'm not actually going to record this and make the edits. I'm just going to talk about the performance aspects. So you need to get the voice around it. Let's listen to the preceding phrase.
And in it I would carry my stone to Kilburn. There was a little shed in the...
And then try and read it, relax yourself, take a breath, and then perform the part and try and repeat the same accent. There was a little shed in the yard, and behind this I drove one of the birds, a big fine one, white, with a barred tail. Something like that. So try and get into the feeling that if you can remember back to how you're performing it, the kind of tightness of voice, whether it's up or down, the tongue position, forward, back, up and down. These are all things that you probably unconsciously use to make a different kind of voice, and they all have an effect on the voice, so they all have an effect in the up and down. There's a little shady, silly things like this that you might use with less emphasis to distinguish different voices. So you need to remember how you previously created the voice so that when you need to repeat it, you can do so. If the voice is less extreme, it's easier to repeat. If you start a piece with a really, really extreme voice, then you're committed to carry it on throughout the piece. And if it's a long piece, you might find that quite tiring, but great fun. In this video, we looked at some of the aspects of recording a dramatic part for Librivox. I hope you found it interesting. Goodbye.